Today, during Native American History Month, I'll tell the story of Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce Native American Nation and his surrender speech, "I will fight no more forever." To begin, I'll share what led up to this prolific speech. The Nez Perce of Oregon's Wallowa Valley had given up 75% of their ancestral lands to the U.S. government in the Treaty of 1855. Only 8 years later, in 1863, settlers discovered gold on their remaining 25%. A gold rush ensued, and the government pushed for 90% of that portion as well. Joseph the Elder refused to accept the diminished boundaries of their new reservation, rejected their treaty, and refused to leave the Wallowa Valley, which was their home. In 1871, Chief Joseph the Elder told his son on his deathbed, "This country holds your father's body. Never sell the bones of your father and your mother." Chief Joseph gave his word. 6 years later, in January of 1877, the Army demanded that the Nez Perce leave for the Lapwai Reservation in Idaho. Chief Joseph worked with other chiefs, Looking Glass and Whitebird, on resettlement negotiation, but tensions were high. Disagreements were many. In May, U.S. Army General Howard offered an ultimatum to move to the new reservation in 30 days. They would consider any refusal an act of war. Knowing what war could mean to their people, the chiefs agreed to the new boundaries and began packing their horses and goods. Just before they set out for the new territory, some of Chief Whitebird's young warriors sought revenge for a murdered kinsman. They attacked and killed some white settlers. Knowing there would be retribution, Chief Joseph led a monumental retreat in an effort to avoid bloodshed. An epic flight began, with U.S. Army troops hunting them down as they fled east. Chief Joseph would lead the way for 700 people, including only 200 warriors with their women, children, elders, and all their goods and horses. They had hoped the Crow Nation might offer them sanctuary, but they would not. A new plan emerged to make for the Canadian border where they could be received in peace. Still, the Nez Perce knew that some in the U.S. Army might wish them dead before seeing them freed. The war had lasted over 3 months and almost 1,400 miles across Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. They had fought 2,000 American soldiers and their allies in 4 major battles and 18 conflicts. Just 40 miles from the Canadian border's freedom, near the Bear Paw Mountains of Montana, they battled for their lives. After 5 days of fighting, the Army reduced the Nez Perce ranks of fighting men to only 87. Chief Looking Glass, Chief Whitebird, and Chief Joseph's own brother were all dead, 6 chiefs all told. The old men were killed. The women and children were near starvation and freezing. Most of the camp had fallen into General Miles' control, but some had fled to the hills, to fates unknown. He was beaten and heartbroken as he rode to surrender to General Miles and the just arriving General Howard. Ironically, the person putting the war to its end is the one who most opposed it in the first place. Famously known as "I will fight no more forever," it ended a devastating days-long battle in October mountain cold with no blankets, food, or water.
I am tired of fighting. Our chiefs are all killed. Looking Glass is dead. The old men are all dead. It is cold, and we have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them, have run away to the hills and have no food. No one knows where they are. I want to have time to look for my children and see how many of them I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear me, my chiefs. I am tired. My heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever.
Many chiefs were known for their leadership, bravery, and strategy, but after the Nez Perce War, Chief Joseph was also renowned for his heart in fighting for his native nation. He may have thought that this surrender would allow them to return to the Northwest, but that would not be the case. Following the surrender, Miles marched Chief Joseph and his people to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, then Oklahoma, where they perished from disease. Chief Joseph spent the following years pleading his people's case, traveling to New York, St. Louis, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., even meeting with 3 presidents over time. In 1885, Chief Joseph and 267 others who had survived were finally allowed to return to the Pacific Northwest, although not to their true homeland in Oregon's Wallowa Valley. Chief Joseph would go to northern Washington's Colville Reservation, while about half went to the Lapwai Reservation in Idaho. After many years of appealing to the U.S. government, Chief Joseph died in 1904 by his fire at his adopted home in the Colville Reservation in Washington. According to the reservation doctor, he had died of a broken heart, lonely for his homeland. He never gave up advocating for his people. The story of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce is a striking example of how unjustly American military conducted themselves with the native nations. While Chief Joseph proclaimed, "I will fight no more forever," he did indeed fight, but no longer with weapons. He would see no more bloodshed where words could prevent it. Instead, he fought for native nations with his words, through diplomacy. Though he never got to see his people return to their ancestral land, his legacy continues. Chief Joseph's confidence, courage, and wisdom still light the way for new generations, making him a symbol of heroism and resistance.